endless deserts and deep gorges. Along the old Silk Road, we travel by train through a mysterious country, Uzbekistan. The former Soviet Republic is a country offering both 1001 Nights and communist-style prefabricated homes. A country with strong women, twins in uniform, and some very special camel driving techniques. A journey from the deepest caves in the world to the remains of the Aral Sea. Tashkent, capital of the Presidential Republic of Uzbekistan, founded only in 1991. In 1966, it was the victim of a devastating earthquake. It was rebuilt in the modern Soviet style. Now massive transport routes crisscross the city. The main train station is located in the city centre. Waiting on platform 1 is the so-called Silk Road Express. Engine driver Ahmalkhudja Yuldashev checks everything once again so that the train can leave on time at 8 a.m.
Even as a child, I dreamed of becoming a train driver because my father was one. He drove old Soviet machines. The working conditions were really tough back then. Today, everything is much better and more comfortable.
The railroad is still a lifeline for Uzbekistan and its 33 million inhabitants. It takes about 20 hours to go from Tashkent across the country to the east to the former shores of the Aral Sea. The road network is poor in Uzbekistan and flying is expensive. Because of this, most people just take the train. Uzbekistan is located in the heart of Central Asia, between Afghanistan and Kazakhstan. Our journey takes us from the capital, Tashkent, towards Samarkand, along the Hissar Mountains and further to Bukhara, and across the desert to the almost dried up Aral Sea. Water is the greatest treasure of this dry country. In the 1970s, several dams were built on the slopes of the Tian Shan Mountains, which still fulfill Tashkent's water needs today. But there's not just water in these mountains. Hidden deep within them is a secret that the Soviet Union guarded for decades. In the 1940s, uranium was discovered here. For the miners, a top-secret city was built out of the ground. Today, it looks like a ghost town. One of the last inhabitants of Jangiabad is Marat Enyakeyev, who was one of the first people born here 67 years ago. Every morning he makes his rounds, First stop, the daycare.
Вот 67 лет назад, в возрасте 1 месяца, меня...
I was only 1 month old when my parents brought me to this daycare in 1954.
25 лет назад,
Now nobody is left.
случился распад Советского Союза,
When the Soviet Union collapsed and the mine was closed, there was no more work and almost everyone left.
из-за безвыходности. Не было работы, не было заработка.
Things are lonely in Jangiabad. The former music school, like the whole city, was built by Volga Germans. It feels like a faded European memory in the middle of Asia.
Я имел опыт обучения в этой школе 3 года на фортепиано.
When I was a child, I took piano lessons here. After 3 years, the teacher told my parents that I shouldn't come anymore because I had no chance of becoming a musician. I was incredibly happy with this statement.
Я был бесконечно рад этому событию.
5 years ago, Marat got married for the second time to his childhood sweetheart, Larissa.
What are we having today?
Cheese soup.
Will it taste good?
Of course, you know it will.
I can't remember.
There's new life in Jangiabad again. The Olympic boxing team is training here in the pleasant mountain air. Larissa and Marat have befriended young Sohiba and perhaps adopted her a bit.
Я занимаюсь боксом с 2017 года.
I started boxing in 2017 and I've been on the national team since 2019. Half of the month I'm at home and the other 2 weeks I train here.
2 раза в месяц.
And the training is hard for the Olympic team. While boxers in other countries prepare for the competition in high-tech gyms, the coach in Uzbekistan has more rustic methods in mind.
Originally, we only trained men here, but for 6 years, we've been preparing girls for competitions as well.
And the regimen is strict. Get up at 5 o'clock, then an endurance run. After breakfast, training in the hall, followed by stone lifting at the river.
I want to succeed. I hope to take part in the Olympic Games someday and win a gold medal.
The training in Jangiabad is exhausting, so it's nice to have a surrogate family like the one Sohiba has.
Greetings, my big girl.
Я не знаю, тебе должен понравиться.
Now eat a nice bowl of soup.
Конечно, скучаю.
I am very oft homesick, but my will to achieve something in boxing is simply greater.
Всё затмевает.
Нам очень приятно, что мы
It's so nice to have you because we miss our own children.
скучаем по детям.
Marat's sons, like so many others, have long since left Jangiabad. The Silk Road Express has left the mountains behind and is now moving through increasingly sparse vegetation.
The construction of the railroad began here more than 100 years ago. In Soviet times, the railway network was the highest priority, and there still is a lot of construction going on.
Thousands of years ago, caravans travelled along the banks of the Zarafshan River to the east and west. It's the lifeline of probably the most legendary city in Central Asia, Samarkand. The centre of the city, Registan Square. Today, a popular spot for photos, and in the 15th century, the site of the most prestigious university in the Islamic world. Uzbekistan is considered a police state, and recently even has special police for tourists. Twins Fatima and Zukhra were actually English teachers before they joined the police. Their beat, the Registan.
To wear a uniform, it was a dream from our childhood, and opening new department, the tourist police department, we were the first who started to work here. So I thought, it's me, and I took my sisters with me.
Patrolling isn't that easy for the two of them, because the tourists want one thing above all, a photo with the twins in uniform.
The people, especially teenagers, wanted to take a picture, and mostly girls. They wanted to be like policemen like us.
This place was a hub for mathematics and astronomy in the 15th century. Shah-e-Zinda is a magical place. For 600 years, the necropolis has been hanging on the hills over Samarkand. Muezzin Abdugani calls the faithful to prayer. The large tomb lies within the twins' precinct.
Because we work in this place, historical place, and when we have a nice relationship, I may say relationship, then work will be easy. If some troubles happened with tourists, we may work together.
During Soviet times, the 11 mausoleums were left to decay, but recently they've undergone extensive restoration.
Bundan oldinlari O'zbekiston mustaqillikka erishishdan oldin
In the past, life as a devout Muslim was very difficult. There were only a few mosques in which one could pray. There was hardly any possibility to train as a muezzin. Today, there are 2,000 mosques in Uzbekistan, and new ones are still being built. Every Muslim can once again freely and openly practice their beliefs.
Muezzin Abdugani is also responsible for the care of the tombs. The most important place in the complex, the tomb of Abbas, who is said to have brought Islam to Samarkand.
For me, it is always a deep feeling of gratitude that I am given the honor of serving here. This is a holy place because Abbas, who lies here, was the Prophet's cousin.
It's evening in Samarkand. The police twins Fatima and Zukhra have been invited to their grandmother's house for a small family celebration.
I am so proud of my two granddaughters. When I was young, it was unthinkable for a woman to wear a uniform.
The twins each have one daughter, are divorced, and live independently.
Our parents gave us a really nice life. because they hadn't such life in their own life. And now we try to show our best for our children.
To the east of Samarkand, mountains rise abruptly from the landscape. Here once stood the magnificent palace of Timur, who conquered all of Central Asia in the 14th century. The Hissar Mountains are the westernmost foothills of the Himalayas. Here, over millions of years, the deepest caves in the world were formed. Speleologists Vladimir Dolky and Pavel Bear are on their way to uncover a great secret.
Back there, I can see it.
We want to go to the Timuran cave to investigate. Legend has it that Timur hid there with his entire army. We want to find out if this was actually possible.
But the route is long and difficult. After 18 hours on bumpy roads in an all-terrain vehicle, they can continue only by foot.
The trip was very long and we're tired. We won't make it to the cave today. We'll set up camp here.
And tomorrow morning, it all begins. Heading down into this canyon. Vladimir and Pavel have been working together for 8 years now and have explored many caves.
Это самая простая и самая дешевая еда, которая в народе называется бич-пакет.
This is the simplest and cheapest food there is. Classic student food. Here in the mountains, it's very convenient because it's so easy to prepare.
Here in the mountains, there's hardly any infrastructure. The two men are on their own. They must be careful, especially in the evening. After all, bears and leopards still live here. At 6 in the morning, the march to the Timur Cave begins.
We have to go down here and then along the river through the gorge and then back up again. The cave must be behind there somewhere.
Down the steep cliffs, we go into the canyon, called the Kalai Sherkhan, the Lion Fortress. The cave has 2 entrances. The explorers decide to take the smaller one.
Inside the cave, it will be very cold, so we need to dress warmly. We will try to explore as much of the cave as possible to see if the survival of many people here was possible at all. Most importantly, of course, is water. Without drinking water, no one could have survived here.
Even though it's really hot outside, inside the temperature drops quickly into the single digits.
Вова, смотри, здесь какие-то остатки чего-то есть. Смотри, что тут есть.
Looks like leftovers here. Take a look at this.
I don't think so. Let's go.
All right, let's go.
No more daylight reaches this part of the cave. The explorers find themselves in total darkness.
We have to descend deeper now. We suspect there's water down there. If the stories are true, there must have been some kind of lake here in Timur's time. And if it exists, we'll find it.
Timur ruled an enormous empire in the 14th century, from present-day India to Turkey. His victorious campaigns are said to have begun from this cave.
Look, there's a small waterfall.
Yes, the water is collecting down there.
Drinking water for Timur.
But was water alone enough to keep hundreds of soldiers and maybe even their horses alive?
There is definitely old food here. How old it is, however, is difficult to say.
After 5 hours in the cave, they start their way back.
We found a small reservoir, so there is water here.
However, the way into the cave is difficult. It's hard to say if it could have been done with horses. In any case, they could have been sheltered.
Still, there's not enough evidence to say whether Timur was here. It still remains a mystery.
They'll come back to explore Timuran Cave further. From here, it's less than 100 kilometers to Afghanistan. The Silk Road Express is now heading west again. Everyone has their own way to pass the time. Of course, food is also important on such a long trip, and it's served at their seats. Like everywhere in the country, the national dish pilaf is on the menu. Rice with carrots and meat cooked on a coal stove.
The sun and the stove push the temperature in here up over 60 degrees Celsius. It's really hard to cook in such heat.
Uzbek cuisine is full of meat. Here, mutton goes with everything.
The guests mainly want to eat pilaf or meat skewers, and God willing, I'll have enough to satisfy them all.
The train is now entering the next famous city, Bukhara. The oasis of Bukhara is said to have been inhabited as early as 500 BC. It was once famously rich and one of the most important stops on the Silk Road. Bukhara lies some 2,800 kilometers northeast of Jerusalem. Yet it's home to one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world. Daniel Matatov, son of the old rabbi, is a watchmaker here in Bukhara. He's rented 1 square meter from a small travel agency to carry out his business.
We've been watchmakers for generations. My grandfather, my father, my brothers, me, and also my son. When my grandfather lived here, the Jewish community was huge. But as time went by, it became smaller and smaller.
Every day at 6 o'clock sharp, the 53-year-old closes his store and heads home. The first Jews from this ancient community are said to have settled here after the Babylonian captivity, around 500 BC. Even 100 years ago, the Jewish community contained more than 25,000 members. Today, Daniel and his wife Lyubov and about 150 others make up the last Jews in the city.
Well, how was your day?
How was yours?
Quite good. Our future, like that of our children, lies in Israel. What kind of life would that be, alone, without our children? We have to go where they and our grandchildren are, even though it will be very sad to leave this wonderful house behind.
After her father-in-law, the old rabbi, died, the 49-year-old and her husband took care of the synagogue just across the street. Today, community members are preparing a memorial service for the dead.
We want to remember my mother-in-law today. Her name was Anova Maria, and she died in the USA at the age of 90 and was buried there. Every year we hold this Memorial Day here in her honor.
A community member has agreed to read, and it will all be streamed live for relatives in the US. He is the chazan, the cantor, and has no training. Everyone around this table wants to leave the country in the next few years, mainly for economic reasons, for Israel or the US. There they can easily get a residence permit.
Even if I leave Bukhara, I won't forget our traditions. I carry them deep in my heart, and I will continue to live the life of a Bukhara Jew everywhere. It is simply in me, and I will pass on everything I know to my children and grandchildren.
It seems that the 2,500-year-old history of the Bukhara Jews is about to come to an end. A religion that was indigenous here for over 1,000 years before Islam came. By the early hours of the morning, the Silk Road Express has reached the edge of the Kizilkum, Uzbekistan's great desert.
My father used to tell me how hard the work was, especially on long-distance trips. The sun shone so strongly on the metal roof of the locomotive that it became unbearably hot for the driver. Today it looks completely different. The driver's cab is comfortable, and we even have air conditioning.
Unfortunately for those in the carriages, there's no air conditioning. Everyone tries to cool down in their own way. Despite the heat, the most important thing in every Uzbek train car remains the tea kettle.
For our people, hot tea on a hot day is the most normal thing in the world.
I've already taken off my shirt because of the heat. With a good working ventilation system, it would be more bearable here. But one rule still applies. If you drink cold water, you sweat more. If you drink hot tea, you sweat less.
Kizilkum means red sand. The enormous desert stretches from the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan through Uzbekistan to Kazakhstan. Originally, the desert was populated only by nomads, but was settled in Soviet times. Borders are unfamiliar to its inhabitants. So the Aldiarov family, originally from Kazakhstan, has been living on Uzbek territory for decades. Father Kalambai has decided that today should be a special day for his 13-year-old daughter.
God willing, I want to teach my daughter how to milk camels today. She has to be able to stand on one leg and balance the bucket with the other. We have 6 camel mares, and they're not easy to milk.
I'm looking forward to the milking and will give it my all.
But before that, the dishes have to be washed. And that's the work of Nazirka and her younger sister.
I'm happy to help in the kitchen, but now I enjoy working with the camels.
But unfortunately, the camels, which are left to roam free, aren't there. And the father can't see them anywhere. The eldest son, Kalim John, is supposed to search for them. But before that, a refreshing bowl of camel milk. Then, off to find Papa's motorcycle. Today is also a good day for Kalim John, because normally his father wouldn't let him use the motorcycle.
The desert is big, and there's no trace of the camels. But with God's help, I will find them.
Camels have a good sense of direction and always find their way home. But when? No one knows. Luckily, Kalim John has a good nose and discovers them grazing on some desert grass.
I really found them. Now I can drive them home to be milked. My sister will be so happy. Everything will be fine.
Kalim John has an unusual but effective driving technique. Everyone is ready and waiting. The milking can finally start.
The first thing we need is a calf to drink from the mother. Then the teats swell and you can milk them. Look how nicely the milk comes out.
Mother Saliha has years of experience, but Nazirka is anxious.
Now I'm scared. I hope the camels won't kick me.
Don't worry, you don't have to be afraid.
Standing on one leg is not so easy. But then somehow it all works. The first bucket is finally full.
Most of the time we sell the milk at the market. But when we are invited somewhere, for example to a wedding, we also like to bring the milk as a wedding
These camels too still have to be milked today.
I think I now understand how it all works. Now I can help my mother with the milking.
And she still has 5 more camels ahead of her today. In the blistering heat, the train crosses the biggest river of Uzbekistan, the Amudarya. Inside, everyone is exhausted. And the onboard restaurant has already closed.
After I've cleaned everything up, it's back to square one for the return trip. Again, I will prepare fresh pilaf, beefsteaks, mastava and meatballs, so that our guests have something to eat. Sometimes passengers have extra requests, and I try to fulfill those as well.
For the 35-year-old train driver, the shift is also slowly coming to an end.
I got married in 2012 and had a son. He's in the 3rd grade and loves everything about trains. He's constantly playing with his little diesel and steam locomotives. When I come home, he always asks, "Dad, where have you been? How was your trip?" He's just interested in everything. If he becomes a train driver someday, that would make me very proud.
The Silk Road Express has almost reached its destination. Nukus, the former gateway to the Aral Sea. A little further north once lay the world's 4th largest inland lake. Starting in the 1960s, its tributaries were cut off to irrigate large cotton fields. Today, its coast is just a rock face in the desert. Not far away, the former port city of Moynak. Back in the 1980s, it was still located on a peninsula surrounded by water. Most of the people here survived by fishing. Today, their boats lie in the desert sand near the former harbour. Erosion of the sand is now the main problem in the region. A few years ago, a large project was started with the aim to make the desert green. Shahri is studying environmental science in Tashkent and is one of the first to witness the project's success.
Hello, are you Vladimir?
Yes, that's me.
Vladimir Zuyev leads a conservation effort here.
Едем на дно Аральского моря, чтобы ты своими глазами увидела.
I'm going to take you to the bottom of the Aral Sea. There, you can see the plants for yourself.
I've heard and read a lot about your program. Now I'm very curious to see what it looks like.
In the early 1960s, the Aral Sea was about the size of Bavaria. Everything that's now called Aralkum or Aral Desert was covered with water. To the right of the path, the first results of the planting project are already visible. The water will not return. The hope now is to bring the constant sandstorms under control.
I can hardly imagine that 30 years ago this place was deep at the bottom of a lake. Today, people just walk around here. Unimaginable.
Shahri's grandmother herself comes from Moynak.
I'm 21 years old, and when I was born, the water here had already disappeared. Now with the plants, we can at least stop the sand from eroding. You can always do something. That's why I'm so interested in ecology.
The roots of the bushes reach deep into the earth and provide support.
Where do the bushes come from and how do you plant them?
Citizens all over the country collect the seeds. They are then distributed either by tractor or even from an aeroplane over the desert.
Only a tiny part of the Aral Sea basin has been planted. It seems to be working, which gives the people here hope.
Let's go. I'll show you the best part.
The water of the Aral Sea. A puddle compared to its former glory, but still impressive. Vladimir's father is still a fisherman, and he himself has a very special connection to the water.
Come on, we're going swimming.
No, not me.
Hello, Aral Sea. Here is your son, Vladimir. Whenever I am here, my heart tells me I have to go into the water. My whole life is connected with this water, this sky and this earth. I love being here because nobody knows how long the last remains of the sea will exist.
Despite his moving words, he can't persuade Shahri to join him. From the remains of the Aral Sea across dusty deserts to the green highlands of the Hissar Mountains, Uzbekistan, a land of extremes.